Oh, how's it going? So, today is a kind of gloomy day. Um, I'm not in that great of a mood, which is kind of a bit annoying because my birthday, and I kind of wanted to do a video about age. I just turned 40, and I don't really feel that old. I only feel old because I remember stuff a lot of people don't remember, or weren't even around for. Um, I suppose I guess by definition, I'd be middle aged. I just kind of take the average of people in my family, and men usually live a little bit shorter lives. I do think I'm a little bit healthier than most of the people and most of the men in my family, but it does seem like uh, 40 is probably about middle age. My dad's 75. Well, let's hope he makes it to 80. Um, he doesn't look like he's in very good shape. And I try to get after him to take care of himself and eat better and exercise more, but he's got a lot on his plate, so I'm not going to blame him too much. I've tried to do the best I can for that. Um, that's, there's only so much you can do for somebody else. But, the Bible actually kind of puts the age of 70 kind of in your mind as good time to die, or sort of appropriate time to die. um, the and it even gives you a condition that if you're particularly healthy, maybe 80. I do think I'm fairly healthy. I've been losing weight. I do feel a lot better. My pants fit, and my shirts fit a little bit better. um, I do feel better, and it's a psychological thing. I weigh myself every morning, and if I don't see uh, regression, as in putting on weight, I do feel a little bit better. Even if you're treading water, some days are better than others. I've been consistently below 190 over the last week or so, so that's good. I would like to get down. Let's see where it goes. I don't have a number in mind. I know a number was just like slightly below 180 where I felt my best. I've never been really below that other than when I was younger, but I felt better. I looked better. And I think that, uh, that perhaps whenever I'm able to get more money to devote to myself, I will be spending a little bit more on maintaining my health, and if that means eating better, exercising more, um, just you know, you know, some people will look at it as a waste of money, and they'll think, well, screw you. I think I'm worth it. Um, but there's also like the mental aspect of it, that I essentially I do have to start looking out for my mental health. These videos do help me. This is part of that. Here's an interesting thing that these videos, though nobody really watches them. I had a job interview yesterday. I had the option to do it today, but I didn't really want to do it on my birthday, and just the stress. There's enough stress as it is. One of the cats barked. One of the other cats is with my wife at work because she's having some kind of operation on her. She's got a polyp, and I'm a little stressed out about that. I know she's in good hands, but you still stress out about your animals, even if you're pretty sure that it's going to be fine. Going under anesthesia is never a guarantee of coming out of it, even under the best of circumstances. But anyway, I was reading a book last night. I kind of flicked through books that I've already read, just to see, particularly what we would call great books. I have it here. Um, I've talked about the great books at length, perhaps in other videos. This is like my main thing in life is to read great books and understand what wisdom and even just entertainment in them is available. And So there's a series of great books done by uh, Encyclopedia Britannica. It was sort of put together back in the 50s. They've reissued them every few years, and it's supposed to be like it's about 54 volumes, I think, of the greatest works of Western world. There are some things missing. Obviously, you can't put everything in there because it would just be endless. But it was built, back in the day when they would try to get it cheaply, but in very durable volumes. So you have things like Shakespeare, Homer. You have Adam Smith. St. Thomas Aquinas, Aristotle, Plato, all the really big names you have in there. But there's a companion series called The Gateway to the Great Books, and it's 10 volumes, and they're sort of thematic. They're mostly just essays or short stories, depending on the topic. This one is Man and Society, and they're essays. And this one I've been going through lately, just kind of reading one a day. They're only a couple of pages, but I figure it's nice. And there was an essay by Jonathan Swift. Now you might know Jonathan Swift uh, primarily from being the author of uh, Gulliver's Travels, but he also wrote an essay called "The Modest Proposal." That's usually the short term modest proposal for preventing the children of Ireland from becoming a burden to their parents or country. Basically, he suggests that they eat their children and their old people so they don't become burdens. That way, you solve the hunger crisis as well as the overpopulation crisis. Obviously, he was being very tongue in cheek. It is a bit sad to know that that country was in such a bad shape, and this is part of the reason why so many Americans are here today, because of Ireland being a dump for a long time. My family included. And, I do look at Ireland with great affection, probably more than any other country in the world besides my own here. It's hard for people like me to talk about Ireland without, to be objective about it because there's such a sentimental attachment to the country. Anyway, the thing is that, you know, uh, that's not really the point I was trying to get to. There was another essay in here. Uh, it's called Resolution When I Come to Be Old. And I think that this is a really interesting one to talk about when you're having your birthday. It's only like a page. It's really just sort of a to-do list or to-don't list. And I thought I'd go through it and give my own spin on it. So I can basically put this, where is it? It's in page, uh, sorry, this is not very good videoing, but yeah, it's only one page here. And I thought I'd go through it. And it basically, it's a little bit old language. It was written 300 years ago. So resolutions when I come to be old. Not to marry a young woman. My wife is more or less the same age as me. Not to keep young company unless they really desire it. That is so smart because I often see some people trying to hang out with young people as if they're like the older statesmen. No, you're like 20 years older than everybody, and it just looks awkward and weird when you're not hanging around people when you're hanging around people who are not the same age as you. You just don't have that much in common. I mean, um I was on a train the other day, like it's the subway, and I was listening to and they were probably about 20, 18, 20 or something like that. And I was just like, you might as well be speaking another language. Like, I know the words, I know sort of the meaning, but the substance behind what's being spoken, I have no clue. And I'm all right with that, I'm sure that, people who are older than me used to look at me like, what the hell are you on about? Unless they really desire it. If they come and seek you out, that's a little bit different. But don't sort of nose your way into other people, it just intergenerational friendships are a bit bizarre. Never really, you can never really be on even ground. Um, Not to be peevish, morose, or suspicious. I guess peevish is sort of like, like your pet peeves is just sort of being full of scorn or uh, being annoyed by things. Morose, right? Just kind of glum or suspicious. I think that's sort of that's a stereotype of old people is that they're old and cranky or they're always glum. Everything's going to hell or being suspicious. I don't like the look of those young kids. That's a very stereotypically old person thing to do. So don't do that. Apparently, not to scorn present ways, wits, fashions, or fashions, or men, or war, etc. So don't really be too hard on the present. Like fashion people, things like that. And then because like the thing is, like people were hard on you when you were younger, and just because you don't understand things, this kind of goes back to the previous one, is that just because you don't understand things doesn't mean that you can, necessarily bad. We always talk about, things kind of falling apart as they go along, that perhaps it just seems like that because things are changing and you were comfortable in the way things were in the past. I do think generally things are getting bad, but there's always we don't notice the good things. We only notice the bad things. We're sort of we have a bias towards noticing the bad. I mean, because usually the good things are taken care of. You don't have to worry about technology. You don't have to worry about. I mean, who's had a job that didn't, who in the last like 20 years has had a job that didn't require you to apply online or find the job at all online. That's I I I would probably say one job I had did not happen online. It's mostly because it was a friend of a friend who hired me, so I didn't need that. So anyway, not to be fond of children. I don't know about that. I like children. I guess like overly fond of them because I guess when you're old, it's just kind of perhaps why are you fond of them? Is it mostly just to kind of relive your youth through other people? I don't think that's necessarily bad, but once you start kind of, we always, people always kind of look at somebody living vicariously through their children or their grandchildren or younger, brothers or sisters. Um, that is kind of it's a little bit pathetic. They're going to go through their own life. You can be there for advice. You can be happy for them, but to kind of live through them is not really that good. Not to tell the same story over and over to the same people. This is something that is so stereotypical of old people telling the same. So this just kind of evokes the thought of Grandpa Simpson telling the same story that is meaningless. It warps, and you really don't know where it's going. I actually have noticed this in myself, and I actually noticed this in my father when I was down in Virginia telling the same story again and again. Sometimes it's fine. I think that, um, if it's your kids and your kids are sort of, kind hearted towards you, then perhaps they can just sort of humor you, but nobody's really impressed. Um, so I think that I've been trying to kind of reel it in. I suppose that, the more you talk, the more, you only have a limited amount of things to say. So, um, if you tell the same stories over and over again, you kind of sound boring. Um, so that's a real one that I have to kind of keep in the back of my mind or in the front of my mind. Not to be covetous. I have learned, to really rein in comparing myself to other people, seeing what other people have and wanting the same thing, envy, covetousness, whatever you want to call it, is basically the less you want, the less you feel the pain of wanting something and not getting it, right? So I think we all want good things. And so I think that jealousy is like I want what the other person has for myself and not for them. I basically want to steal what they have. And I think that there's sort of a, a sort of positive version of covetousness where you want what they have, but you don't want to deprive that person of what they have in order for you to have it. So if you see, like, if you're single, or you don't have a job, or there's a hole in your life and you want to fill it, and looking at somebody else and say, I want what they have. I don't want your wife or your job. I want to have a job because I see it brings you a lot of joy, or I want this, I want a wife because I can see it brings you a lot of joy. I want, what you have, not necessarily in the specific. Not to neglect decency, cleanliness, or fear of falling into nastiness. This is something that you can notice, especially with animals. Um, Cats, particularly, are very clean animals. There's a lot of grooming involved. If you have a cat, they're always head deep in their crotch, coughing up hairballs because they've overgroomed themselves. Um, and you notice when they get old that sometimes they start neglecting that. And you notice that in people. And that's where that sort of old person smell comes from. And it really turns people off. People don't want to be around you if you smell. I know it's kind of a little bit shallow, but it is a physical, um, aversion. Like, you just don't want to be around people who are gross. They look bad. They don't take care of themselves. It's just a sign that that you're kind of going. Um, Not to be over severe with young people, but give allowances for their youthful follies and weaknesses. There's an old saying that there's no fool like an old fool. That the young person, you shouldn't be too hard on them, because this is their chance to learn from their mistakes. I often, there's a scientific thing that's been going around at least the last 5 years, saying that people, perhaps we shouldn't allow young people to vote until they're like 25 or something, because they don't have a fully formed frontal lobe, or something like that. You shouldn't be doing anything that tinkers with your continuing development up until that age. But I often, that maybe that explains why they do dumb things, but I often think that they haven't learned, haven't been in a circumstance that has caused them to learn from their behavior. That you have to go out and make mistakes. Obviously, some mistakes you can't let kids make, like getting in a car when you're drunk, like that. A little too dangerous of a risk for somebody to learn something. But often, when you're a kid, that you learn, ooh, I got away with that. I shouldn't have done that, and nothing bad happened. You're smart, then you notice, okay, just don't do that. Be really careful. Um, if you're dumb, you continue to do it until someone dies or gets hurt, or you get hurt. Who knows? So yeah, I say, yeah, you have to let young learn from themselves. Not to be influenced by or give ear to knavish, tattling servants or others. Yeah, I think that this is basically don't engage in gossip, or because you have to sort of understand, why are you telling me this? Like, often the most benign reason for engaging in gossip is there's nothing else to talk about. We're bored and my life is totally uninteresting. Let's talk about how she's screwing up her life. Um, but sometimes it's very, like, why are you telling me this? What do you want from this? You know that I'm going to react a certain way. You could be lying, you could be exaggerating, you could just be telling the truth. But why are you telling me this? You're trying to manipulate you're trying to control how I see this other person. And that's not really that healthy. It can be in some cases. Did you hear about, so and so? Don't be around him because I'm looking out for you. I could see if it's a preventative thing, but if you're trying to manipulate somebody, that's not good. Not to be too free of advice, nor trouble any of those who desire it. Unsolicited advice, do not give it. I've been trying to reel it in. I don't have that many people I talk to give advice to. You have to be very careful with this, because it seems like you're a bit of a know-it-all. That you, yeah, I mean, if it's not welcome, it actually kind of turns you off like turns off the connection between you and the person for future advice. That if they do want to solicit you for any wisdom that you may or may not have, they're totally burning that bridge there by you basically coming off as a know-it-all. And they'll just say, well, he thinks he knows everything. To desire some good friends to inform me which of these resolutions I break, neglect, and wherein, and reform accordingly. So you need people around you to tell you that you've been slipping up. Um, that means that somebody has to be looking out for you, and that's really what a friend is. It's not just somebody to spend time uh, watching TV or drinking beer with. It's somebody who helps you maintain. We in one of the previous notes here I was talking about grooming. Well, you need somebody to tell you that you look fucking gross. Um, and that's essentially, that's what a friend is there to say. Look, you've been doing some dumb shit lately, and you need to pull it together. Um, Not to talk much, nor of myself. Now, I suppose like this is more of a way for me to get my thoughts out. Not a lot of people have time for conversation. I like to have conversation, but I like to have targeted conversation. Like have meaning behind it, not just to shoot the breeze. It's nice. There's pleasantries. You can maintain relationships by just updating each other on your life. But ultimately, there's not a lot of constructive goings on in that. Um, so I don't know. That's okay. Not to boast of my former beauty, strength, or favor with the ladies, etc. Basically, don't live. Boast of your past glories is kind of what he's saying here. Is just don't live in the past. You might have been something back then, but now you're an old man. You are the current person that you are. You do have access to the old person, but you're no longer that person. Not to hearken to flatteries, nor conceive I can be beloved by a young woman, and to hate and avoid those who seek a legacy. Um, so yeah, I mean the thing is like you don't flatter yourself too much. That if you're 40 years old, don't go chasing teenagers, or if you're 80 years old, don't go chasing 20 or 30-year-old. It's pathetic, uh, and I don't know that you would really have that much in common. The relationship with your wife or a friend is really about being on an even plane. It's never going to be perfectly even, but to be peers, you know, I think is important. And if you're not going to be, fairly on the same page, it's kind of a weird like teacher student, relationship that turns sexual at some point. Um, and I don't know how long that's going to last. It's going to be something that just it fizzles out. Just like every teacher you've ever had, it can turn into a friendship. There's always going to be a mentor protege uh, type of relationship there. I guess some people can pull it off, but it's pretty rare. Um, Not to be positive or opinionative. I'm not sure about this positive term. To be opinionative. Now, one of the problems I see with a lot of people, particularly on social media. I'm not really on social media that much. I do have Facebook, a check in every now and again, and people just have opinions on everything. Uh, I have some opinions, but I often keep them to myself. Or if I see something in the news or society and I don't know very much about it, I will either not have an opinion on it or I will go learn a lot so I feel like my opinion is worth something than just sort of shooting the breeze. Unfortunately, a lot of people, you saw this in the coronavirus, people had nothing to do. You were forced to stay at home. You had political decisions being made left, right, and center. And a lot of them were based on medicine and science. And most people just had no clue what was going on, but they felt like they had the right or, even the duty to talk about it. And I felt like I don't know much about the medical aspect of it. I asked my wife, who's a doctor, a veterinarian, but you know, diseases kind of work similarly. Cats can actually get a form of coronavirus. So I would ask her about the sort of medical aspects of it, do a little bit of research on my own. But ultimately, I found that I don't know that I can do my own research on things that I don't even have the groundwork for. So if you want to talk about, for me, if I hear something about uh, the energy industry, the economy, I feel like I've got the groundwork to read about that because I've had a lot of classes on microeconomics and macroeconomics about different forms of industrial organization. I can go and if I do enough research on it, I feel like I could become somewhat of an expert on it. But I just don't do that because you can't study everything. So, but the coronavirus whole pandemic, people had all kinds of opinions about medicine and science. They just weren't educated enough or weren't willing to go get a biology degree to go be able to talk about this. And unfortunately, people, they felt comfortable about just spouting random nonsense. And it was on both sides, by the way. And you saw that the doctors kind of, I won't say they were liars because I don't believe that's true. But when they change their minds 5 or 6 times on the same topic, you lose credibility. I'm not saying that you're wrong, that science doesn't ebb and flow with the tides. You lose credibility when you change your mind 10 times because then it looks like you don't know what you're talking about. You're just kind of going with whatever is convenient at the moment. That might not be true, but it looks bad to everyone else. Um, as well as I mean, just take any topic in the news. Russia, as soon as Russia invaded the Ukraine, all kinds of people who've never known a damn thing about Russia or Russian history or the Ukraine or the Ukrainian history, people are really comfortable to have opinions on that. And to be honest with you, I don't know enough about the relationship between Russia and Ukraine. I know a little bit because I have read a decent amount of Russian history, but I still feel like, well, that was ancient history. What's been going on in the last 20 years? And, you know, I just kind of like, okay, I understand invading a foreign country under really dodgy circumstances or pretexts is not a good thing. Um, but I don't know why, and I don't know how it's going to stop. And I don't feel educated enough to talk about it. Um, and I'll leave it there. I mean, the thing is, I don't really have an opinion other than it's not a good thing to invade a foreign country without really needing to. So the last one is not to set up for observing all of these rules for fear that I should observe none. So the thing is that one thing I've learned is that when you make resolutions, so typically this is maybe like a birthday resolution. This is what I'm using it as sort of just a talking point while I have tea with you. But if you've ever noticed people who make New Year's resolutions, they make New Year's resolutions, they make like 10. I did this year. But there were things that was already doing. It was just like maintain the thing that you're doing. Uh, so often it's like lose weight, stop drinking, get a new job, finish something that you'd started, start something that you'd never done before. And often they bite off a little bit more than they can chew. So the thing is that if you follow all of your resolutions too much and then you kind of slip on one, you feel like, well, screw it. At some point in the year, like 12 months in the year, start off in January, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week or 4 times a week or whatever it is. I'm going to, do this. And you start off gung ho. And then by mid-February, so that's like 6 weeks, 7 weeks, you just crap out. Part of it is because it's winter, it's dreary, it's not a lot of, you're not having a lot of fun. You don't see the results right away, and you think, well, what the hell am I doing? You get lazy. You might have one of those, fuck it, I'll just eat a whole entire pizza to myself. And then you feel really bad about it. And then you're like, well, if I go back to the gym, then it's admitting that I can't really do this on my own. And, your resolutions kind of fall apart. And And I think anybody who's ever made a resolution and tried to carry it out is very difficult. You really do have to reorder your whole life. And so if you observe all of these resolutions that Swift was talking about, then essentially you're going to slip up on one. So don't be too hard on yourself if you slip up. Because if you are too hard on yourself, you start beating yourself up, you start getting dejected and depressed, and then you just give up on all of them all at once, in one fell swoop. And that's kind of a pity, because there goes everything, and your life's not that much better. The people around you might not see you in that good of a light, because they might see you as a quitter. If they know about your resolutions, they might see you as a um, um, just you actually doing the things that he told you not to do. I think most of them are pretty good advice there. So anyway, that's about all. Um, it's kind of a rainy, dreary day, so I'm going to sit in bed and hang out with some cats and read a book, and you know, put some beer in the fridge, so for dinner. And I'm just going to take it easy today. One day that you can do that without feeling guilty. I suppose I could feel guilty, but I don't, because I actually do a fair amount of work on most days. So I'm just going to take it off. So anyway, um, I'll probably see you next week. Bye.